A quick sort of rolling review of TOS 2.06 on the Atari STe. It's running an external 200 megabyte SCSI drive, which is partitioned into 4 50 megabytes sort of partitions. So yeah, sort of 91 released for the sort of Mega STe range, I believe. But obviously you can put the sort of TOS ROMs in on the STe, on the standard STe. This one's our TOS 2.16 plane. If you look at the earlier TOS, you know, stuff that you were getting with sort of early SPFs or things like that. Sort of 1985 versions of the original TOS ROM 1.0. It sort of feels a lot less evolved, is this. Probably more noticeable if you're creating a sort of workflow in sort of high res 640 by sort of 400. But there's sort of noticeable tweaks and sort of evolution of the sort of GUI over the years, you know. Obviously there was later versions and much more evolved versions on the Falcon, but I would consider this quite a nice evolution of the TOS on the standard, which will run on the standard ST. Things like size to fit. You might take it for granted. I suppose it's a bit like auto range or something like that on the Windows systems. Obviously just arrange the icons to a size that adapts to the size of the window. So things that you take for granted these days, but things at the time there were, you know, new enhancements when we were in the early stages of sort of GUIs, you know. I'm not really an 8-bit guy, to be honest. I didn't start with Commodore 64s and ZX Spectrums and stuff. You know, I come in 1990 with sort of GUI computers, which was, I suppose, the birth of modern computing, really. And sort of set the blueprint for, you know, where we're at today with modern Windows systems and things like that. So this was really my kind of vintage era, you know. I'm not really into pissing around with trying to load games off cassettes and command lines. I evolved from a much more fluid kind of computing environment, and even in 1990 when the ST had been out for a few years, you know, 5 years, it still felt like a very going forward sort of machine, and that was kind of my feel for the vintage. Don't get us wrong, I used to start learning on the BBC's at comprehensive school, you know, messing around with BASIC on the CLIs. 1993 I was writing computer programs in COBOL, Pascal and C, compiling them under the Novell network at DOS 6.22. So perfectly adequate to navigate myself around the CLI based systems of the era, but and at one point I preferred DOS over Windows, even though I come from the ST, but from a vintage thing historically and the way my computing culture and feel evolved, then the ST is always the sort of machine for me, because the US was in ROM. There's no loading times, unlike the Amiga. It felt very tight. The Amiga didn't have that feel, even though, you know, the Amiga claimed it had multitasking. Yeah, it did, but I mean, how much can you possibly do on, you know, 7.2 megahertz? You're not going to be doing a great deal of multitasking on 7.2 megahertz anyway. So, you know, all the Amiga 500 owners that rave on about the Amiga being multitasking, yeah, it was on the quicker machines, you know, even the 1200, you know, you're not going to be doing a great deal of multitasking, are you? You know what I mean? It's kind of, you know, you might be able to play some tracker music and the word processor, but, you know, these big claims of the Amiga 500 being far superior, in terms of this, no, this feels much tighter, it feels much together than the Amiga. Felt a bit messy in that respect. That's why I've had Amigas in the past. I've had a couple of 1200s, a 500 plus that I couldn't really be bothered to restore because it didn't inspire us too much. Very clever architecture on the Amigas, but the GUI, I don't know, there was just something about it. This just, I don't know, there's a certain feel about this that sort of appealed to us, you know. So there you go. But TOS 2.06, it's a nice kind of GUI. For the time, I mean 91, this had a nice feel. Got an external hard disk one and a sort of high res sort of display. That's an SM125, which was only made for about a year. But there you go, that's just a quick kind of sort of rolling review on TOS 2.06. Okay folks, cheers.